My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Good evening, happy Friday. It's 6 o'clock, I'm Michelle Dewberry and this is Dewbs & Co, the show where we'll get into all the stories that have got you talking today. And wowzers, what a week it has been for British politics. We've had rule changes, U-turns, a resignation and an MP sentenced for threatening to chuck acid in the face of a love rival and somehow A, not being in prison and B, still being in her job. Has your faith in our political class been dented this week? Mine has. And if you don't know the name Greta Thunberg by now, you must have been living under a rock. But I wonder, why do so many people hang on her every single word? Seems very strange to me. And the number of crimes that end up in courts have shrunk to a record low. Why is that? And given we have a shortage of pretty much every single thing right now, if indeed you believe the mainstream media, then of course it was only a matter of time before the next shortage popped up. And popped up it has. Where have all the taxi drivers gone? We'll have that and a lot more coming up. But first, the latest news headlines.
Hello, I'm Karen Roberts. These are the latest headlines. Environmental campaigner Greta Thunberg called COP26 a failure, saying that the summit is turning into a PR event. She was speaking to thousands of young activists as they marched through the centre of Glasgow, demanding action on climate change. The protest was organised by the school strike movement Fridays for Future.
COP has turned into a PR event, where leaders are giving beautiful speeches and announcing fancy commitments and targets, while behind the curtains, the governments of the global north countries are still refusing to take any drastic climate action.
Lord Patel has been appointed the new chair of Yorkshire County Cricket Club following Roger Hutton's resignation. It's after former player Azim Rafiq accused the club of institutional racism. The club has been banned from hosting international and major matches for its handling of the claims. Two other board members have also resigned. The chief executive of the ECB, Tom Harrison, confirmed the incident is being taken very seriously.
Strong action is being taken in response to this, where trust has been breached, where there is a fault line, where there are problems, and the message we're sending out is we are taking action and we will listen.
Labour and the Lib Dems have confirmed that they will fight in the upcoming North Shropshire by-election after Tory MP Owen Patterson resigned over a lobbying scandal. Mr Patterson faced a 30-day ban for breaching lobbying rules, but a Conservative vote blocked the recommendation before a U-turn was made. The Education Secretary, Nadeem Zahawi, has admitted the government made a mistake when it combined a vote on disciplinary procedures with a Tory MP's suspension.
conflating that with a specific case of Owen Patterson was a mistake. I think to reflect within 24 hours and by the morning have the leader of the House, and I take collective responsibility for this, by the way, to come forward and say, look, we made a mistake to conflate the two, the really important one to get right, and we need cross-party negotiation on this, and I urge all my fellow parliamentarians from whichever party to shed their politics. Let's not play tit for tat. Let's get this right for generations, and actually for your viewers, for the country, to have confidence in the system of scrutiny of MPs.
The European Commission Vice President says that he's disappointed by the UK's efforts to reach an agreement on the Northern Ireland Protocol. Maros Sefcovic announced EU proposals that would create an express lane for goods through simplified certification and reduced checks. But he claims after a third round of talks with Britain's Brexit Minister Lord Frost, they are no closer to an agreement. The two men will meet for continued talks in London next week.
We have seen no move at all from the UK side. I found this disappointing, and once again I urge the UK government to engage with us sincerely. Our aim should be to establish stability and predictability for Northern Ireland. We hear a lot about Article 16 at the moment. Let there be no doubt that triggering Article 16 to seek the renegotiation of the protocol would have serious consequences.
Reports of sexual harassment and sexual offences to British Transport Police have risen by 63% since before the pandemic. Over 400 reports have been made between April and October this year. That's up from 250 in the same period in 2019. The force says the increase is evidence that more people understand this behaviour is unacceptable. Meanwhile, the number of officers who are specially trained to investigate sexual offences has almost tripled. Nazanin Zaghari, Ratcliffe's husband, has been on hunger strike for 13 days outside the Foreign Office. Nazanin has been in prison in Iran since 2016 after being accused of plotting to overthrow the government. Richard Ratcliffe started the strike after his wife lost an appeal for freedom. He told GBNews the UK government must take action against Iran as it's their job to protect its citizens.
The reason we came on hunger strike was because Nazanin was threatened with imminent imprisonment. So I came out here as an escalation to stop that happening. I don't think while we're here it will happen. But yeah, I guess we're looking for the government to make it really clear to Iran that there are consequences for escalating it the way they have, and obviously to behind closed doors settling it.
Work is underway to clear train tracks in Salisbury 5 days after two trains collided. Cranes were brought in to remove the damaged carriages. The two trains crashed in Salisbury's Fisherton Tunnel on Sunday night. South Western Railway says journey cancellations and delays will continue for the next 10 days. Well, that's all your news for now. Let's now get back to Dewbs & Co.
Thanks for that. Well, with me until 7 o'clock, we've got Scarlett Maguire, who's the former Labour advisor, James Woodhousen, who's the visiting professor at London South Bank University, and Joe Phillips, journalist and former spin doctor. You know the drill as well on this show. It's not just about our opinions, it's about yours as well. And if it matters to you, it matters to me. You can get in touch with me on email, gbviews@gbnews.uk. You can tweet me at Michelle Dewbs or at GBNews, or you can find us on any of the social media platforms, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, everywhere. Get in touch and let me know what you're talking about tonight. What are your reactions to the topic that we'll cover, and what have we missed? Is there anything that you think that we should be talking about that we're not? Let's get straight into it with the backlash over the government's decision to abandon the attempts to block the suspension of former Cabinet Minister Owen Patterson. Of course, this was all about the lobbying rules. Well, it rumbles on. Boris Johnson has been accused of damaging trust as the former minister resigned from his position. And earlier today, Education Secretary Nadhim Zawali admitted that the government made a mistake. You just heard the clip there. Scarlett, as she heard the clip there, was shaking her head. So I wonder, has your faith in the government and in politics been dented? Scarlett?
Well, I think it would be difficult to get my faith in the government to be dented anymore, actually, although this fiasco was incredible. I mean, first of all, Owen Patterson, who anybody who found out what he'd done, he was completely guilty. A cross-party committee found that, and he still thinks he's innocent. I mean, it beggars belief why you think that you can earn an extra 100,000 and lobby and break all the rules. But far, far worse was Boris Johnson deciding to change the rules to let off Owen Patterson and then whip all his MPs and everybody. I mean, what is so terrible is that everybody thinks they're just in it for themselves, and actually, it's a serious attack on democracy. So, I mean, Boris Johnson obviously had to backtrack. The whole thing was never going to work, but he's left a very, very nasty taste in people's mouths. And I think he's made it more difficult to run the country. He's made it more. He has even diminished people's faith in politics more.
More. Jo, your thoughts?
Well, I agree with everything that Scarlett said, and I think the real tragedy is that, I mean, this government is beyond belief in their venality. The fact that they are so completely out of touch with the public, with their own MPs. I mean, why does anybody need to be paid £100,000 for lobbying, which is against the rules anyway, on top of a rather hefty MP
Well, he'd
salary?
argue that he was paid £100,000 to act as a consultant to a brand. What's wrong with that?
Well, he's got a job. He's an MP.
And you're allowed second jobs?
Yes, you are allowed second jobs, but you shouldn't be using your position as an MP to then lobby on behalf of the people that you're working for. It's really clear. The rules are really clear.
Yeah, I wonder.
But you see, what I think is really so sad, Michelle, is that there are so many people who are so disengaged with politics, and they go, oh, they're all the same, they're all the same. And it's, you know, I've spent my life trying to engage people in politics. I wrote a blooming book about it and talked to school kids about it and young youth parliament and things like that. And I just think this sort of thing doesn't help democracy, because you go knocking on doors, whatever party you support, whoever you support, if you don't take part in the democratic process, then we are diminished as a country. And the number of people who will be turning their back and saying, they're all in it for themselves, they're all as bad as each other, is awful. And it's awful for the really hard-working, decent people who are in politics, not just at Westminster, but in Scotland, in Wales, in Northern Ireland, and in councils across the country, who are actually trying to do the decent thing.
What's your view, James?
Well, I very much agree with what's been said. I mean, Owen Patterson, not my favourite person, but I think the memories, not here, but in the media classes, are somewhat selective. I mean, if I mention Bernie Ecclestone, Richard Desmond, Oleg Deripaska, and all of Tony's cronies from the Blair era, 13 years of Blair government on the part of Labour, public finance initiatives, Keith Vaz today, and many other cases of the Labour Party. You know, sleaze is not confined to the loopy Tories. It's a long-standing feature of British parliamentary democracy, and I think it's very damaging, as you say.
Well, I want you to just pause your thought, because I'm hearing a whisper that there's a problem with your microphone. So whilst I sort that out, I know, I wonder if that was a deliberate ploy. I wonder. But what I want to talk about, Scarlett, is, you know, that was just one part of the kind of the shenanigans of the week. The other part is what's gone on with Claudia Webbe. I find it absolutely astonishing, and I mean astonishing, that you can be found guilty of harassment, which involves things like throwing acid in someone's faces.
I think it was threatening to throw.
Oh, sorry, okay, that's what I meant. Sorry, threatening, that's a good correction, thank you. So threatening to throw acid in someone's face, threatening to share naked pictures of someone. How can that individual still have a job as a member of Parliament? It blows my mind. It really does.
It is beyond me, right? It is absolutely beyond me. There's no question about it that the Labour Party said she's not a Labour MP anymore. They've asked her to resign. They think that she should go, and of course she should go. And it's quite interesting that years ago somebody said, well, you know, we don't really need rules because shame will make people leave. Well, we all now know that it's not true. Of whatever colour you are, you know, whether you're a red Labour or a blue Tory,
you can stay in. And of course, she should not be allowed to go on being an MP. I mean, it's terrible. Yeah. But she wasn't given a custodial sentence, and that's for the judge.
Well, yeah, and Joe, this is one of the things that gets me, because I just think, how low do you have to be? Because we've all seen people, we've seen victims of acid attacks. I can think of a few now that spring to my mind. What kind of a person would even have that on their mindset to threaten that?
Absolutely.
What kind of a person must you be to have that? I can't ever imagine a scenario where I would do that. And if you are that kind of person, if you do have that in your your locker, your thought process, you have no right being paid by a taxpayer to represent them. And like you just mentioned, Scarlett, where is the shame in all this? You need to take a good look in the mirror, does Claudia Webbe, have a word with herself and do the honourable thing and resign and stay away from public office.
Actually, worse than that. Like Owen Patterson, she thinks she's innocent and she's appealing.
I mean, this is what's so shocking. It's the lack of self-awareness of people. And, it is not exclusively within the political classes, but they are there. And as you rightly say, I mean, if you could even think of being that threatening, I mean, we're talking about those sort of threats just weeks after David Amess was killed, after Joe Cox was murdered. We've seen the reaction, and we talked about it on this programme a couple of weeks ago. But, if you can even think in those sort of terms of violence and threatening revenge, how could you possibly represent constituents who you might not agree with?
Indeed, and James, I hear that the nation can hear you again. What a treat, dear viewers, what a treat. I interrupted you, you were saying, and you were making a very valid point, because lots of my viewers are messaging in already saying why the continual Tory bashing, they're saying, and you were actually countering that. And then the mic failed. So what were you saying?
Well, I like to bash the Tories just as much as my friends here. But, I think we can't afford, and I'm pleased to hear what they say, we can't afford double standards, And, I mean, Claudia Webbe is only the most egregious case of Labour nonsense, and much worse, in fact, and that really is a serious attack on democracy, what she was threatening. There's only one little thing I would say, which is, I mean, she's protested her innocence, she's backed by, in the past at least, by Jeremy Corbyn, she got a 10-week suspended sentence, which is nothing, but I have to differ from you in one way, Michelle. I know where you're coming from, but to think of bad things about people, I mean, I've never thought about an acid attack, certainly not. But to think of bad things, we can't get into a situation in Britain where you're guilty of a thought crime.
No, but it wasn't, you didn't just sit on your own toilet thinking about it. This was
no, I understand.
This was actually made it as a threat.
I understand. We're just discriminating here, that's all.
Yeah, it was verbalised.
Yeah, it was.
The whole kind of notion, we've done programmes on this channel before about the whole concept of revenge porn, sharing naked images with the likes of people's families, friends, employers. It's disgraceful and despicable behaviour, and it is not in keeping with somebody that has any business in public office, if you ask me, any business at all. And I've seen her today, she's tweeting on various things. I look at her, I just think, where have you got no shame? What is the matter with you? And I think that it is damaging to public trust and connection with politics. And I think that, Joe, you make some really valuable points, which is the calibre of people that we want in our politics. We want a good standard of person. Yeah. And all of this ridiculousness, it does turn people off from wanting to get involved.
And the awful thing is, and I completely take James's point, this is not something that is exclusively Tory. There have been Labour and Liberal Democrats and Scots Nats and various other of political hues who have been caught up in similar things. But I think what the government has done this week, which is particularly appalling, is trying to change the rules. So, this isn't just marking your own homework, it's actually then getting somebody to write your own homework and then marking it.
Yeah, it was very ill-advised as well, because I must say I don't know why they thought that... Well, I know why they thought they could get away with it, because they've got a majority and they thought they could,
But that's the point. It's about advice, isn't it? I mean, both Scarlett and I have been advisors to different political parties in the past. And you sort of think there is nobody clearly advising the government, or if they are, they're about as useful as that glass of water. Or there's nobody who's brave enough and big enough to say that's a mistake.
Yeah, and I think the whole three-line whipping as well, I think that was a bit of a mistake. James, you're itching to come back.
I'm not itching, but just on the Patterson business, if I may go back to that.
You may.
I think the judge with Claudia Webbe, that's another story. I think when sleaze is alleged, and it was pretty outrageous in this case. Nonetheless, I do think that its constituents, perhaps 10,000 of them, who should be given some kind of plebiscite about whether somebody should go or not. And I don't think...
That's exactly what they were worried about. The point is that once he was suspended he was only going to be suspended for 30 days.
Yeah.
And what they were worried about was that 10,000 of his constituents were going to sign a thing and say, no, not to come back. I mean, that's what it was all about.
No, but my point is that I'd rather they did that, the constituents, than unelected officials held MPs to account. I'm not saying that Patterson wasn't guilty.
But they're not unelected officials, they're elected officials who are overseen by an independent commission.
Yeah, and how independent is that commission?
Well, I should think she's pretty damn independent, given that she's stood up to this government and she's been prepared to investigate the Prime Minister.
She also has a record, and since you conceded the point about anti-Toryism. She also has a record of specifically, of going after, you did earlier actually, but she has a record of going after Tories much more than Labourites.
But the Tories are in power.
Also, there are an awful lot more of them, right? And actually, she's incredibly brave. I mean, she's taken on Boris Johnson. That's what all of this
is. She elected? Is she elected, Scarlett?
No, she has been appointed to look into, to investigate.
As an independent.
It then goes to a cross-party committee, right, who unanimously looked at her findings, read her very long report and said, yes, she's right.
But I'd still prefer the constituents to have the final
all
word.
he was going to get was 30 days suspension. It was then up to his constituents what they did, right? But you can't say, oh, well, we'll let him go. Now, what are we supposed to do? So, it was very, very clear, and it was put in. It was put in before. It was put in the 90s for the Nolan report. It was really important because people were worried about cash for questions.
Would the Nolan report be about the Labour era at all, in your memory?
Well, Nolan came out after.
Because it came out before the Labour era, and actually those rules have stayed since the 90s, right? Because John Major was so worried about the sleaze.
But I still think that between, commissioners and lords and all of that, I'd rather local people, not just in this case, but generally, when a case comes up, I'd rather put it to the people than to these dignitaries.
And they have that, let's hope they make the right decision about Claudia Webbe.
Indeed.
They can do
a judge did that, didn't he?
No, but they can call.
They can recall her.
Constituents can now say if it's 10% or 10,000. I can't remember what.
Yeah, she has the right to an appeal first, and then at the end of that.
But they can say, actually, we don't like this.
Yeah. Well, I wish they were more to the fore in the whole process, rather than commissioners. You see, the real point here. You talk about an attack on.
Hold on, stop. First of all, you have to have the investigation. The investigation cannot be done by the constituents. The investigation has to be done by somebody. So Catherine Stone investigates. Everybody gives evidence. She looks at the evidence. She then says what she finds. The committee of elected MPs then decide what to do with her decision and whether to agree with it or not. Then the constituents decide.
I'd rather have the constituents much earlier and more prominent.
But they decide without the investigation.
I'm sure we can come up with some clever procedure.
You can't, actually. You have to have an investigation.
Well, right? something tells me that I don't think we're going to get an agreement here anytime soon. Lots of you guys are getting in contact. A lot of you are getting in touch in defence of Owen Patterson. Elizabeth, a lot of people.
Are they all called Patterson by
No, they're not actually. Elizabeth has been in contact saying Mr. Patterson wasn't lobbying. She says, for goodness sake, do your homework. A lot of people actually see what Owen Patterson was doing, not as lobbying, but as a public health good.
Why did he need to be paid by the company that he was talking? Or the
Well, what I would say back to that is, you know, I don't really have a problem with people being paid to do second jobs. There's no disputing you shouldn't be lobbying it within that second job. But for me, I think that if you've got there in the palm of your hand information about a public health problem, you know, if you're getting information that, I don't know, whether it's milk or whatever is potentially being contaminated, there's a whole host of ways that you can do something about that, especially if what your key driver is to raise awareness of this. I'm not sure that you have to repeatedly do it in a way that would be breaching rules. I think there's more fair and better ways of doing it that don't breach the rules. But anyway, I will pause that thought for now. I'm sure we could rumble on. You guys keep your thoughts coming in. We're going to take a quick break. And when I get back, I wonder, Greta Thunberg, it's almost like she's become some kind of prophet, like a climate prophet. What do you think?
The governments of the global north countries are still refusing to take any drastic climate action.
On Brazier at 8 last night, the French government opened a new migrant centre in Calais that critics say will act as a magnet for asylum seekers, will it? Also, China's massively beefing up its stockpile of nuclear weapons. We ask an expert if this really is a new Cold War. And a survey suggests 4 out of 10 young people have no idea what Bonfire Night means. That's Brazier from 8.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Hello there, welcome back. Now, thousands of school children and their parents, in many cases, marched through Glasgow today in a Fridays for Future rally, led in part by Greta Thunberg. The Swedish climate activist addressed her following to say COP26 was a failure.
The COP has turned into a PR event where leaders are giving beautiful speeches and announcing fancy commitments and targets, while behind the curtains, the governments of the global north countries are still refusing to take any drastic climate action.
I've got to say, I don't know about you guys, but I find it a little bit weird just how many people are desperately falling over themselves to basically worship at the altar of Greta. I mean, I could give lots and lots of examples, but it'll take me to the end of the show and won't talk about anything else. But if I give you one, earlier this year, even the former Lord Archbishop of Canterbury, Lord Williams, said this, and this is a direct quote: God has raised up a prophet in Greta Thunberg in a way that no one could predict. She has said things that no one else could have said. Thank God for her.
You can solve your climate crisis.
You can shove your climate crisis up your You can shove your climate crisis, you can shove your climate crisis, you can shove your climate crisis up your
I wonder if those were the words from God that he was referring to. So what am I missing? Is Greta Thunberg really some kind of prophet, some kind of messiah when it comes to climate change, or not? James?
Well, I think she's quite wrong to say it's turning into a PR event. It was always a PR event. But I think if you go back to the last one in Paris in 2015, and you think what's happened since, I think our rulers have really caught a cold over Brexit. They saw that populism had undone them, that they were very distant from the people. And so I think, you ask why Greta's been lionised in this way. I think it's because our rulers are rallying round some kind of cause from which they can gain comfort, they can get back with the people, they can get down there with the kids. And all of that. And it's been largely successful. I mean, it's wall-to-wall climate change, wall-to-wall COP this week and next week. At the same time, it's backfired on them, because when people say that, they're hypocrites flying in with their private jets and so on, and Greta makes the comments she does, then I think our rulers have not had such a success as they would like in terms of, really cohering public support for them.
Joe?
Well, I think, we've only got to look back at the conversation we had 15 minutes ago and talk about the disengagement. I think it's great that young people predominantly have engaged with Greta Thunberg. I think she's been incredibly brave. She's stood up and said things publicly and globally that lots of people haven't done. She might have just captured the imagination because she's a quirky Scandinavian kid and all of that sort of stuff. But she's got attention, and she obviously appeals and resonates with young people who feel very scared, I think. I mean, I think it's becoming a real problem that young people, particularly young children, are very frightened of climate change. And, we talk about it a lot, and we should all be frightened. But there is a balance that one has to get.
We should all be frightened.
Yeah.
I'm not frightened.
Well, you should.
I want you to panic, is what Greta said. Do you agree with that, Joe?
I think we need to, if panic means actually there's a train coming towards you or there's a car coming towards you, you need to get out of the way. If that's your definition of panic, then yes. Because we can't put it off. We can't keep saying tomorrow, 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 because there won't be tomorrow.
Well, what would you do today?
Well, I would actually, bring in some measures. So here's a very small example from where I live, where the Housing Secretary, Michael Gove, has just overturned a local council planning decision to allow 900 new homes to be built, despite the local council saying no, this is a really tiny example, but it's the sort of thing that matters. None of those houses will have electric charging for electric vehicles. None of them will have insulation.
For the Teslas?
None of them will have solar power because it's not made mandatory. So actually, you could do an awful lot of things. We've all changed our habits on plastic bags and recycling and all of that sort of stuff.
But wait a minute. That we've got a cataclysm coming to us, a train, as it's been mentioned. And you're saying that by refusing to build the right kind of houses,
what I'm saying
Michael Gove is accelerating the cataclysm. I can't understand the position, which is that it's also catastrophic, but 900 houses is, really going to make such a difference.
She's not talking
I'm
about
just giving you a small example.
Yeah, but all of the measures proposed about, like, recycling your plastic.
But we've been talking about these things for as long as I can remember, certainly for the last 20 years, and none of these things, any government could have come in and said, right, all new builds have got to be insulated, solar-powered, electric,
I've argued for that for a very long time.
Well, there you are then.
But not about 900 houses. What I'm asking...
900 houses is merely an example that yes, it is global, but it is also happening.
Well, there you go. So Scarlett's come up with an answer. So Scarlett said, here's something tangible that we could do. If this is such a big issue, you could change the rules around if you're going to build, if you're going to do new build developments, make, basic provisions for climate, whether it's electric chargers or insulation, whatever. Are you frightened? I mean, you just said there, Joe, saying we should all be frightened.
No, I think we should take it seriously. What is so good about Greta Thunberg is her saying it's just blah, blah, blah. I mean, what she does is all these people go, oh, you know, we're doing this and we're doing this. And she just goes, it's blah, blah, blah.
But then when someone says to her, so give me some example, tangible things and what you want to do, I don't really see as much wisdom coming the opposite way. So it's easy to criticise. I can sit here now and sit there and go, it's blah, blah, blah.
Do you think an electric charger is going to solve the climate crisis, Scarlett?
I don't think that is what Joe said at all. What we've got to do is we've got to change the way that we live. And it would have helped if in 2011 that actually the government hadn't changed the rules on insulating housing, so that now we're going to have to re-insulate them. Every house should be insulated. Every house should have an electric charger. We've got to start changing the way we live if we're going to stay with only 1.5.
This is all Band-Aid in my
by the
view.
way, Alan,
what about nuclear?
Band-Aid?
What's wrong with Band-Aid? Because you're saying a cataclysm is coming. What about nuclear power? What about geothermal power?
Yeah.
What about something that is more reliable than unreliables, namely wind and solar? What we need drastic technological solutions.
Investment in those.
Yes, investment. That's
you need
right.
to have investment.
At the moment when we've got very low investment.
But we're investing. Well, look, we have got a government that a week before COP26 reduced the duty on domestic flights. We actually have a government that wants to spend money on roads.
But, you know, that to reduce, you want to change behaviour because you don't want the plebs to go to Benidorm and you want to tax them as hard as possible.
She said domestic.
Well,
I do
you
think
know,
you're being deliberately obtuse for an intelligent man, I must say.
Well, there's no need to patronise me. I'm not very intelligent, but I'm not that obtuse either.
Well, I think you are being deliberately
One
obtuse.
of our viewers, Alan Fry, has got in contact saying, I'm a bricklayer and all new houses do have to have insulation in the cavity walls and in the loft. That's according to him. So he would suggest that things are being done to treat exactly the kind of things that we're talking about here. I'm desperately, just to bring it back to Greta for a second, I'm desperately trying to find some viewer interaction which is sharing and educating me perhaps as to why Greta has got this kind of platform that she's got. And I've got to say, I'm not finding any yet. And I guess this is one of the central points. I find it peculiar why this teenage girl has been given such a platform. You know, I was looking earlier on, you know, people like Prince Harry are referencing how great she is, how every family, community and things needs a Greta. David Attenborough, again, how great she is. She's given platforms with world leaders.
It's not just weird or peculiar, it's creepy. Because this idolisation of kids is really dangerous.
No, it's
right? Extremely dangerous.
You get a person. It was Bob Geldof. You talked about Band-Aid. Bob Geldof did it.
No, I meant Band-Aid in the normal sense.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you meant Band-Aid.
No, but if you look at the BBC's lunchtime broadcast, it was a 2.5-minute party political broadcast for Greta, for truancy, for the Scottish National Party, and for kids as the ultimate arbiter of what we should be doing with our behaviour. Yeah, it's their future. It's also your and my future.
Yeah.
You know, do you think that they are more qualified than us to tell us where the future of the world...
I think they've got more of a stake in it, and actually they need to
I'm sorry I've only got 10 years to live, but I still suggest that adults, grown adults...
What, the ones who refuse to change their behaviour, go, oh, we'll drive.
You want to personalise it. We need technological solutions, not going on about their behaviour. Do you think cancelling a mine in Britain is going to solve the cataclysm that you say is coming our way? It's not.
I think stopping drilling for oil, drilling for gas and mining for coal will, yes. And it's not just one mine, it's a lot of them. Everybody, I mean, if we're going to sort it out, we actually have to take it seriously.
Well, taking it seriously, publish a book about it.
I think the moral of my chat tonight is that we're not going to solve it in this 10-minute debate, so we'll pause it for another day. Do get in touch with me. Jennifer's got in contact and said, Michelle, Greta has a platform because the media gave it to her. Well, there you go.
Right.
I'm really
it's a top-down phenomenon.
I'm
top
trying
down.
to find anyone that kind of is advocating it. But I do understand the sentiment that actually, of course, the children are going to live longer and have a bigger stake. But I find the kind of worshipping.
Tony Blair discovered that children are the future, which was a brilliant finding.
Good, I'm going to switch his microphone off again in a minute. I need to move on, I can tell you. Right, the number of crimes that end up in court has slumped to a record low of just 1 in 15. That's according to figures revealed yesterday. The data showed that the proportion of recorded crimes which led to a charge or a summons fell to just 6.5%. It got me wondering, why do so few crimes lead to a conviction, and how worried about this should we be, Jo?
Well, it would be interesting to know a little bit more about this survey because, you know, we know perfectly well there's been a huge backlog because of COVID in magistrates' courts and in police processes and the Crown Prosecution Service. So, you know, that's 18 months of backup. And in order to get something to court, it requires a lot of people, a lot of paperwork and a lot of effort. So it's not surprising if this is only related to COVID delays. We also know that the police are pushed and stretched to the limit. And every time, you know, somebody comes out, a minister says, oh, and the police must deal with this, that's another bit of paperwork and process that they have to deal with. But it is worrying because if people don't see justice being seen to be done, then, you know, eventually people stop reporting crimes to the police. That means that the figures show, oh, there are no crimes in this area or crimes gone down, which is not true.
Yeah,
and that's a worry.
I think as well, Scarlett, one of the problems is the police, generally, there's a bit of a problem, shall we say, in terms of how the police are currently regarded by quite a few people, I would say, out in the general public. So obviously this Wayne Couzens thing, there's lots of other cases that are going through right now, some of them quite high profile about some of the actions that the police have done. So right now what we need to be doing is trying to demonstrate and trying to recreate that trust and regard for law and order. And when you hear stats like these, a lot of people will then join it up with stuff like you'll see pictures of police patrol cars painted like with rainbows and all this kind of thing. And people will join it up in their mind and think, is law and order being taken seriously in this country?
No, I don't think it's got anything to do with the rainbows. I do think there's been a really serious problem, particularly with rape, with sexual assaults. I mean, how really few actually, which are reported, go through, and everybody knows that the masses and masses of rapes never go. I mean, I remember dealing with a woman who had a very serious sexual assault, and she said, if it ever happened to her again, she'd never go to the police. It had just been so awful dealing with them and then going to court. So I mean, I think you're absolutely right that if people think they can get away with things and everything's backlogged, it's just completely hopeless. I mean, it's really, really dangerous, and we've got to take it seriously. And actually, I was talking to a young woman. I mean, she was my local. She was in my local pub and she went to join the police. She was really keen on it. She wanted to do domestic violence and she was back in the pub. And I said, you know, what are you doing? And she said, I was a detective. I was just shuffling paper. We were jailing people with mental health problems. She said, actually, I'd rather do something else. I'd rather work here.
Oh dear. James?
You sure you want to take me?
Well, I've got to say, I'm going to move on in about 2 minutes, so keep it nice and succinct if you can.
Well, I just wanted to say that, you know, I think Joe is right. Police are stretched to the limit. But one of the things they're stretched by is this fascination with hate crimes. And in some cases, when they've really overstepped it, you know, what people are thinking. And I think this absorbs an enormous amount of time that would be much better spent on the causes that Scarlett has adduced. And, you know, hate crimes are put down in a register. They can count against you. At the same time, they're not a crime. And, you know, the number is always rising. So I think that's a very serious and backward development and explains some of the low conviction rates. By the way, I'm not just in favour, I'm sure you'd agree, that of just, right, let's convict 100 out of 100 all the time. That's the sort of Russian way of penal justice.
We're not even we're talking about crimes that go to court. We're not even talking about convictions. I mean, that's what's so awful.
It's things like shoplifting. You know, I know, as I'm sure anybody watching knows, that it is very unlikely that the police will come out to anything less than £200 worth of shoplifting.
Yeah, well, the thing that always gets me, and a lot of people complain about this, is burglaries. If you've ever had your house burgled, have you ever tried to call the police? And if you did, what happened? Get in touch and let me know your experiences. Have you been the victim of a crime? Did you report it? And if you did, what happened? Anything? Get in touch and let me know. Going to take a quick break. Afterwards, when we come back, you hear about shortages every single day right now, don't you? Well, there's another one. Taxi drivers. What on earth has happened to them all? We'll have that story and more after the break.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
There, welcome back. Now, more than half of licensed taxi drivers have not returned to the trade since the pandemic. That's according to the organisation representing the industry. The Licensed Private Hire Car Association estimates the industry is short of 160,000 of the previously 300,000 strong workforce. Many drivers have left the industry during lockdowns as demand plummeted. Apparently, there's been lots of talk about this today because people are saying that it affects public safety. James?
Well, I think that's a genuine concern. And, not every man, not every policeman, and not every taxi driver is a threat to women. But at the same time, women in particular, but any person party going or shift working or whatever, runs the risk without taxis of getting into a scrape and being cold and walking home. I have to say that our carbonista friends, the climate change fanatics, ought to be pleased by this, because fewer taxis and more walking is what they and the Department Against Transport have been really talking about for a long, long time. We're all supposed to walk, we're all supposed to cycle, so if it's at 5 a.m, too bad, it will save the planet. This is what I don't like about the current
We've
debate.
had that conversation.
Yeah, but I don't mind reviving it
Well,
if
I
it's
think
allowed.
Michelle does, because we're actually moving on.
Well, she can speak for herself.
I actually think, Joe, it's broader than just this. Anyway, I think that this is the taxi drivers at the moment, but I think that COVID has really kind of thrown everything up in the air, and it's made a lot of people reevaluate, what do I want to do with my life? A lot of people might have been driving taxis for various reasons. They've had time off now. Often it'll be paid time off because of furlough and stuff, and they might have been at home more with their families. Now lots of things have changed. They've been able to reassess what's important to them. Lots of other industries and trades have started increasing their wages in order to try and attract talent from various other places. And I think we're going to see a shift in many places, not just taxi drivers.
I completely agree with you, and I think, you know, what we're all asking ourselves, I think, is what's work worth? And, you know, it wasn't that long ago that we were all standing around clapping on a Thursday evening, you know, praising the care workers, the dustbin collectors and all the rest of it. Now those people are getting abused by people because everybody's gone back to normal and they don't want to wait, they don't want to, you know, and they're still being paid rubbish money. People are having a reassessment about what they do. But the thing about taxi drivers, I play badminton every week with a taxi driver who had to stop work during COVID, and he's just beginning to go back to work. But, you know, they're self-employed. They have to pay for their own car, their insurance and their licence.
A lot of money.
It's a huge amount of money. And outside of London, you know, you're not going to get the same fares that you are. And a lot of the jobs are doing school runs or hospital runs and things like that. Well, they all stopped. So, yes, I think you're absolutely right. People are having a rethink and thinking, why am I doing this?
Yeah, school runs. God, can you imagine having as much money as being able to do your school run via a taxi? That'd be nice, wouldn't it?
No, it's the council pays for children who've got disabilities or illnesses to go to school because they obviously can't travel on public transport.
But those contracts must still be there then?
Yes, but the kids weren't going to school, were they, during COVID?
If I may... Oh, go on,
Scarlett. Scarlett, we're not ahead from Scarlett yet.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. It's masses and masses. I mean, there's 130,000 vacancies in care homes. That's desperate. There's taxi drivers. I mean, presumably, people who want to drive for a living, it's easier actually to go to be a delivery driver because. But I mean, not that they're where the pay is going up and up because they're desperate for them. I mean, it's just going on. Hospitality. I mean, you go past a restaurant, staff wanted. It's crazy at the moment.
But it blows my mind then. How can anyone be unemployed in this climate? When we're sitting here saying that there's all these vacancies across all these different sectors, you've got all these different sectors rising their wages, how can anyone, I mean anyone that's physically able to work obviously, how can anyone that's physically able to work be at home, not working?
Well, because all of these jobs actually take some skills. I mean, that's what I think.
And that's the problem.
I think that's what people keep on thinking. Oh, taxi drivers unskilled, care workers unskilled, hospitality.
I could go get a job in a pub tomorrow. I've never worked in a pub in all my life.
And you might not last the week.
Yeah, but I'd still have a job.
But there's another agenda here. I mean, I hear what you say, and I think there is a rethink, Joe. But in the States, in particular, what begins as a rethink about, you know, is the pay, the conditions, and everything right, has become what's known as the Great Resignation, the Big Quit. And I think when we look at civil servants, for example, not every civil servant, but quite a few, they would rather stay at home, do less, maybe resign their jobs, than actually perform public service. And I think there's a sort of professional indolence going... Well, can I finish, Scarlett?
That's based on what?
Am I allowed to...
We're talking about
absolute
the people
nonsense.
We're talking about it's the taxi drivers who aren't there, the HG
farm workers,
who aren't
hairdressers.
Yes, I mentioned civil servants. I'm sorry that's a crime.
You have to have a go at civil servants.
Yeah, well, what's wrong with that? We're allowed to have a go. It's called free speech. Now, nobody can say that taxi drivers...
Pay for civil service.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody can say that taxi drivers, like lorry drivers, enjoy fantastic conditions of work and everything. Sadiq Khan has a whole vendetta against them. And if they want to resign from their jobs, that's fine. What I'm talking about, which I mentioned, is the professional classes saying, we don't like Boris, climate change is cataclysmic, we're going to fold our arms and actually say, no, this isn't good enough for us, we're not going to perform public service.
Where's the evidence?
Well, you can tell the backup in the licences, except for Tory, I think it is, the licences for taxi drivers is to do, yes, with COVID.
Local authorities.
Yeah, local authorities.
Run at central
but local authorities have civil servants. They're called not elected members, but officials.
Civil servants in Whitehall are
Yeah, but I
probably
wasn't
a
mentioning
big...
them.
No, I know, but that's what most people will think of. They will think of civil
Well,
servants.
I'm talking about bureaucrats who don't do their
Do you mean
job.
public servants?
Yes,
Do you
I
mean
said
people,
public service.
Do you mean people working in the public sector?
No, I don't mean just nurses. We'd like to catch me out, I'm
No, I
sure.
wasn't.
But
I'm
talking,
asking you a
I'm
question.
talking
Do you
about
mean people in the
indolent,
public sector?
middle-class professionals who love to go on strike against the interests of this country.
Well,
Where is your evidence?
Well, if you look at the BMA, they threatened a strike. Do you want to hold a brief for them?
We're talking
hang on,
about
he is
people.
right when he talks about strikes.
We're talking about people
when
who
was the last-
provide the licences for local taxi drivers, which will
We've digressed
probably
a little bit
be-
now, though, aren't we?
Well,
We're
no,
talking
'cause we
about
started talking about
strikes.
taxi drivers. But just to say that most of those people probably working in a local authority are probably on a fairly low administrative grade, probably can't afford to get on the housing ladder where they live. So I don't recognise this inflated middle-class, you know, yoghurt knitting class that
Yogurt
you're
knitting?
talking.
How do you knit yourself?
I don't know. But it's a damn good programme
You
idea.
can tell, this is a Friday afternoon, can't you? I will back James up a little bit. So when I don't know how we ended up talking about strikes and stuff, but we did. And you are right. There is often talks of strikes, whether it's, I think it was the BMA was talking about the doctors should strike because they didn't like the, you know, the new rules that came from there. The nurses, there's talk about NHS workers striking because of the pay rise there. So there is often that. Anyway, I will just park that there because it is Guy Fawkes Day, Guy Fawkes Night, however you want to talk about it. Will you be celebrating that in any way tonight? There was a bit of a study done somewhere, I can't remember where now, I've got to say, but it made me laugh. It was around children, asking them who Guy Fawkes was. Some of them thought it was the guy that invented a fork. They had no idea. Of course, it was the gunpowder plot of 1605. Your thoughts before I let you all go and head off into your Friday evening? Is anyone going to a fireworks display? Anyone into it? No? You're going to a fireworks display?
Well, if I can bear the bangs, you know, but I know I'll be eating not beef, but bugs in the new green yoghurt weaving kind of barbecue.
Oh,
yeah, you know,
it's the food at bonfire parties that is so good. It's the sausages and the baked potatoes.
Well, I'm with you there, as long as it isn't insects, you know. But I think the fact that we've got historical amnesia about gunpowder, treason and plot is a great sadness to me. I think the other thing which I overheard from you, Joe, in the ante-room here, was that they are so polluting. I've got to ask, what is the carbon footprint of a rocket? And shouldn't they be banned now?
Yeah, well, I agree. I mean,
No, we're not agreeing.
I think it's absolutely bonkers. You know, we're talking about climate change. We're
So
talking
fix
about
the
this.
fireworks. That
So
will
actually,
save
yes,
us from the cataclysm.
I do think you really are being terribly annoying.
Terribly annoying. James, has anyone ever called you terribly annoying before?
Very, but not terribly.
Athena,
But
by the way,
it does seem stupid, doesn't it, to burn an awful lot of stuff.
Well, there's fun involved. Are you against Christmas crackers too?
Yeah.
And Christmas?
Yeah.
Christmas packaging and wrapping?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, it's a killjoy world you want us to go to.
Well, in defence of you, James, Joe thinks you're very annoying, but Athena's messaging saying, glad to see you've invited James. We need to hear more voices like his, balanced and fearless. That's what Athena thinks about you, balanced and fearless. Anyway, look at it. It's all we've got time for. It's almost time for us to go and head off to whatever it is that we're doing, whether it's bonfire nights or not. What are you going to be doing tonight?
Or Christmas.
Christmas
Imagine that.
tonight. What is he even talking about? Honestly,
what's he on?
I've got no idea. I'm heading off. I'll be back on Monday, 6 till 8. Guys, thank you very much for your company and thank you for yours. Have a good evening and have a good weekend.
Hello. Many areas enjoyed some dry weather on Friday, but changes as we head through this coming weekend. Rain will push its way southwards across the UK. Showers flowing from the north, but it will be the strength of the wind I think we notice most through Saturday. So we look at the pressure pattern, then you can see high pressure towards the southwest. That's what's kept things mainly dry today. But towards the northwest, this area of low pressure, that's going to dominate our weather as we head through this coming weekend, bringing some rain, but also those strengthening winds, like I said. Already through Friday evening overnight, we're going to see some heavy, more persistent rain spreading in across much of Scotland. But elsewhere, actually, some decent weather for Bonfire night. Lots of cloud around, but mainly dry. Just a bit of patchy rain towards the west, and a noticeably mild night to come than recent ones as well. Last night temperatures dropped close to, if not below, freezing. Tonight temperatures holding up well above freezing, 5 to 10 degrees. Now later in the night we'll see more persistent rain spreading in across Scotland and Northern Ireland. That will continue to push its way southwards through the day. But ahead of that, actually a lot of dry weather first thing across much of England and Wales. Quite a lot of cloud, some brightness towards the east. But that will change, like I said, as this cloud and rain will sink its way southwards through the day. So quite heavy rain on that, like I said. Still dry towards the southeast. Sunshine and showers following from the northwest. But for all areas, those winds will strengthen with that rain band. Particularly towards the west, we could see coastal gales. A milder day to come across the board. As we head through the rest of Saturday into the evening and overnight, then that cloud and rain will push its way southwards. The rain turning quite light and patchy. Clearer spells following from the north, but it will be the strength of the wind we continue to notice. Those winds picking up as we head through the night across much of northern Scotland in particular. Here we could see gusts 60, 70, possibly 80 miles an hour in exposure. A wind warning in force for that. Elsewhere, still quite windy, and that will keep the temperatures up, so another mild night to come. So we look ahead to Sunday morning then. You can see here still some showery rain across much of northern and eastern Scotland. That will slowly ease through the day, but we continue with those very strong winds across Scotland through much of the day. Elsewhere breezy, yes, but it will be mainly dry. Quite a lot of cloud around towards the west, but a lot of dry weather, bright or sunny spells, particularly towards the east. Same changeable into the early part of next week. Some rain, particularly towards the north and west, mainly dry further south and east.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes